It was an opportunity to learn something new that would add value, not only for my career, but my clients as well. And so I think as we've seen the relevance and the pervasiveness of change grow. I've worked across industries with regards to change management and consulting and being an internal consultant. What I haven't seen though is a change COE or CMO with a individual coaching practice, right? There are obviously organizations with leadership development functions that may have in-house executive coaches, but again, I haven't seen this either in my consulting career or working in industry as a in-house change practitioner. I think we're most often seeing this as if you're an independent consultancy, so you're running your own shop, and your coaching is a part or one of your service offerings. BCG or the Boston Consulting Group, I know they published some thought leadership around this topic. For me, the way that I oftentimes introduced it into my change practice, it's really just being conscious and being aware, and really shifting gears and from taking off that consulting hat to really being aware of the need to approach a client solution through the lens of coaching. And that helps to shift the burden and take some of the onus off of you as a change practitioner. And so for me, that has been a big aha moment.
Thanks, Todd. Carol Ann?
Thanks, Theresa. So I just wanted to be honest, I'd take it from my experience in the organizations that I've worked in or consulted in. And I constantly see the challenge across the entire organization in the sense that you will find the need for coaching when organizations are going through a tremendous amount of change and transformation in the way that they work, whether it's the tools they use or the mindsets that they are trying to cultivate and in some ways change the culture of the organization in this regard. And whether it's, in my case, I'm working a lot in the agile space and bringing organizations to agile ways of working. This is not only about people at the coalface and working in squads, which absolutely is important, but it's the senior management that need a tremendous amount of coaching too, to be able to lead an agile organization. And a lot of senior managers are traditionally used to working in the old ways of working and the old methodologies. And it's these guys that also, and ladies, that need to help. They need coaching. They need to be able to change the way that they look at their prioritizations. They need to be able to lead the teams. And so in that sense, it's been really an eye-opener to me, the degree to which we need coaching in organizations. Agile agents, agile coaches, we've got lots of names that we can give them within organizations. I'm leading as the Scrum Master for our change practice based in Sydney. And there's a couple of things. One, I work in my summertime 8-hour time difference to them, and my winter 10-hour time difference to them. And I do get up early, I start my day early, but there is this hybrid life that I live. And in this hybrid world, coaching becomes even more important because there is this challenge of trying to engage with people effectively and bring about transformation. And so I think in change management, whether you're a line manager trying to help people through change, you have to coach them to be able to coach their people. And this is critical. There is almost, in my mind, almost no area of the business that doesn't, to a certain extent, need coaching skills developed within the organization. Yeah, so that's my perspective.
If I can jump in here, I'd like to add a couple of important things. One is the basic toolkit that we bring as change practitioners is all of our change management experience, our knowledge, perhaps one or more methodologies that we've been trained in. We are the subject matter experts on how to execute change. The toolkit of the coach is very different. The toolkit of the coach is curiosity. And the outcome of bringing the two together, which is what we really are talking about here, is something very different than change management alone. The outcome is that using our coaching abilities, what we sometimes refer to as a coach approach, we can be curious about why our sponsor isn't doing what they need to do, rather than just telling them this is what you should be doing. And in that curiosity, we can help them recognize the need to change how they are showing up in support of the change. So I think those are a couple of really important points in this conversation. Coaching is not about forgetting change management.
No.
As long as we're in this practice. It's about, as Ty referenced it, I think, another tool in our toolkit.
Yeah, and I think an important thing about coaching is you're building individual and organizational confidence in the changes that they're going through. And I think that's where coaching can be, and at all layers, it can be very powerful if done well.
Right. You know, one thing I was thinking, it's a question that comes up often is, do you need to be an ICF certified coach as a change practitioner to do coaching? And it's a question we get a lot. And the answer is no, but the type of coaching is different, right? So if you're not an ICF certified coach, then you're probably not going in and getting a coaching assignment per se. You're probably going in with a coach approach, which is understanding how to use some of the tools in coaching as a change practitioner to better deepen the learning and forward the action of the change management work that you have going on. It's fine and great if you do want to get ICF certified, but what we're talking about here is what coaching tools can you bring forward and integrate into your quiver of change management tools. So together, those will increase your impact on the organization. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Now, in our course, we do use the ICF competencies and make sure that you are getting the information that's aligned and with the ICF. But we're not, this is not meant to be about getting ICF certified, because those folks are real deep professionals and certified coaches. They'll be called in to just have a coaching assignment, and they go through quite a process to set up the client relationship and so forth. So I just thought I would add that in.
Sorry, if I can build on that for just a moment.
Sure.
The reason the ICF competencies are so important is because, one, they're based on best practices of coaches around the world over the last 25 years. And two, there's neuroscience behind them. So whether you're interested in becoming certified as a coach or just bringing coaching skills into your change practice, taking a coach training that is based on those competencies is really a good thing. The other thing I want to point out is that the marrying, if you will, or actually they're dating at this point of coaching and change management is happening at the biggest level. In 2000, I think it was 2018, ICF, the International Coaching Federation, and the Human Capital Institute did a research study on the relationship between coaching and change management. And what they found out is high-performing organizations, while they certainly didn't all incorporate coaching into their change management practice, those that did, 78% of those that did said it was the most important factor in the successful execution of the change. Carol Ann, Ty, what has been your experience in how it's shifted how you do change management?
Ty, do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and go first. For me, it's really shifted my approach with my clients from having to, having the mindset that I have to have all of the answers as it relates to change in terms of providing guidance and support and direction and providing the solutions. I think the reality is change practitioners is that, right, we don't own the change. We are the enablers of the change. We all know that as change practitioners. So what's been really powerful for me is coming into discussions, and I have to be very, I have to almost prepare myself prior to going into a sponsor or client conversation to ensure that I'm present, right? That I'm present and I'm looking for those opportunities to actually coach as opposed to tell or consult, to advise. And so for me, that's been the biggest shift. And so I no longer go into meetings where I am on autopilot and it's a status update. Instead, for me, the mindset shift has been, I need to be present. I need to be conscious. I need to be aware and look for those opportunities within our group discussions, within our team discussions, to put on that coaching hat and ask those powerful questions that lead to greater clarity and action and discovery on the part of my client. So for me, that's really been the biggest shift. It's been a mindset shift.
No, it's a great, Ty. I think that there's a lot of really good things, as you said there. And I would like to build on that in the sense that for me, how it's changed, I think, and I think it was one of the early courses that you released, Brian and Theresa, and it really changed the way I had a look in terms of how I delivered change management, in the sense that I think the more I get into an organization and trying to understand each organization, because they are all unique, and even within organizations, there are different pockets of maturity and lack of maturity, and you get all sorts of things within an org. I think it's increased my awareness and sensitivity to, I know we talk about individuals and groups in terms of changing, but it is to be, I think, really focused on building that change muscle within an organization and the constant ability to change. And I think coaching and developing change agent networks as an example, and coaching them to be really good at coaching people in the sense of adopting change and bringing about change and speeding up change, because I think this is partly what it's about as well. So I have used constantly go back to coaching, whether it's me in a one-to-one and trying to understand the need of somebody or how I can help them help themselves. I think it's, in a way, it's helping an organization to learn how to fish, and rather than waiting for the bucket of fish to be left at the front door. So I think in that sense, you need, in my view, you need to be able to empower an organization to change, and being able to receive coaching and to be able to coach in a light way, in a more in-depth way, depending on what is needed, I think is absolutely critical in our transforming organizations, which will continue to transform. So, and that's just how it's I think changed the way I look at change management in some respects.
Yeah, I think, Carol Ann, one of the beauties of coaching, that it's really an opportunity to create or foster a culture of learning, right? It's really an opportunity for you to partner with your sponsor in an environment where they're able to experiment and really be comfortable with putting their guard down and just giving them the place to explore and create that psychological safety for them. And I think for me that is probably the part of coaching that I most appreciate.
Excellent. Yeah. Carol Ann, there's a question for you, and then we'll go to Hillary.
Yeah, I see the question. So thank you, Patty. To me, it speeds up change because an organization gets more comfortable with the change and they're supported in the change. I think to Ty's point, there is that psychological safety. There is the comfort of being supported while you go through that change, and you're helped to go through that change, whether it's a line manager who has even some basic fundamental coaching capabilities to support their team to go through the change and the adoption and the utilization and proficiency that they need to around whatever's changing around them. This, for me, really does help to speed up transformation. I hope that answers your question.
I just like to build on that also. As change professionals, I think we're over familiar with the change acceptance curve, but the more involvement that we get with our sponsors in solutioning, meaning they do the solutioning, they come up with their own solutions, the more they actually begin to accept the change. So I find in my sponsorship development work and doing my sponsorship planning and execution, the coaching is invaluable. And I know that Ty had mentioned, Ty and Carol Ann had mentioned the power of building those relationships in a different way, in a more, I think, a more intimate way. And that's where the speed comes in for me too, is that it doesn't take all this conceptual selling or, basically selling with fear. This will happen. And look, you can have, this level of adoption if you just do X, Y, Z. As they're involved and they get more engaged in the change, we know the acceptance goes up as their integration of understanding goes up. So I just want to...
Terry, just to add to that, and then we'll get to Hillary's question. I'm sorry, Hillary. I really want to emphasize how powerful that is, that through coaching, your sponsors own the changes that they are undertaking, rather than saying, well, Carol Ann told me to do this. Hillary, thank you for your patience. Hillary, you're muted.
Yes, hi. Sorry, I had to let the dogs out really quickly.
Mine are crated, Hillary. Mine are crated.
I know, and that's because you're in charge of this. And I should have done that. Wonderful to see everybody again. It's been a while for me on this call. Ty, of course, wonderful to see you on this line.
Yes, hello.
One of the challenges that we as change practitioners face in high growth companies is the speed at which everything needs to change, right? And so, Ty and Carol Ann, how do you manage a perception by sponsors or key stakeholders that you're going too slowly when you're using things like appreciative inquiry and seeking to understand and coaching skills, and not just, writing communications and coming up with training plans and all of that, and I think there's a tension in that. I'd love to know how you've navigated it.
Oh, that's a big question. And I think each organization is a little bit different, and it depends on their maturity. So, we're moving our change practice fully into an agile way of working. And that's proving to be very interesting and rather challenging in terms of bringing value to the organization quite quickly as well, in terms of the impact that we have. So I think in that way, by doing a lot of incremental pieces of change that bring value, they start to understand that there is value being brought, first of all, because sometimes that's often questioned. And they see the impact of that, potentially, if it's done, if the agile change is done well. And I think it's that sponsor engagement that you get them around why you are doing things, and what are the benefits of that. And I think what's really, really important, that is something that I've started to change a lot, is how I talk to the business. I don't talk in change terms anymore. I talk about business value. I talk a lot about that, of how I'm going to help them achieve what they want. And we know most senior leaders have three really big things that they think about. money, 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 right? What does it save me? What does it make me, et cetera, et cetera. So what's it going to cost me? And if you can help them to understand how you're going to drive change to be faster, to enable them to connect more quickly with their customers, or to I guess have highlight, those inefficiencies that perhaps are there in their process of trying to adopt change, etc. I think you have to educate the organization around change, but you also have to talk a business language to them. And I think traditionally we've tended to, I'm not saying everybody's done this, but I've done that in the past, spoken a lot about why, stakeholder impact analysis and all these really, I think, quite nebulous concepts in the mind of management as to what does this mean? What does it translate into? So if we're going to talk about any sort of analysis we're going to do, or any sort of investigation we're going to do, whatever it is, it needs to translate into business impact. And I think this is really important to do, because otherwise it becomes a disconnect in their mind. It's stuff that, I was speaking to a vice president the other day, a regional president, I'm sorry. And he said to me, what do you change managers do? There are lots of you. Why? What do you actually do? Because you're always busy, but what do you actually do? What are you doing for me? I mean, he's quite in your face. He's sort of guy like that. And so then I started to speak to him about the business impact. And not only what do we do for him, what if we don't do it like that? What happens? What happens to his business? What happens to the transformation that he's betting so much on and his legacy on? And what's going to happen? So I think it's sometimes thinking about delivering messages in that way to the organization and educating the organization at all layers, and particularly senior guys and ladies, as to why we do what we do and why we've chosen to do something.
Yeah, and I understand the value proposition of change management and speaking in terms of business value. But Ty, you and I share an environment where, the rate of growth and the rate of speed and the pressure on us is unrelenting. And so settling down into a conversation to deeply understand something with a sponsor in a coaching context isn't always that welcome.
Yeah, and so for me, Hillary, the way I'm handling this today, I'm currently experiencing this with one of our internal initiatives. And, we often say change management is perception management, right? But let's go beyond that. Let's delve deeper. For me, oftentimes, where organizations and leaders are operating from assumptions that, hey, we're not progressing fast enough. However, there's an opportunity there to actually speak to the people that are being impacted by the changes on the ground. What are their thoughts? What are their fears? What are their concerns? Let's hear from that crowd, because leaders oftentimes are really disconnected from what's truly happening within an organization. And so for me, the way I like to approach this before getting to coaching is actually starting with a risk assessment, and just ultimately that risk assessment serving as a snapshot, as a moment in time of where we are in the transformation, and what are those execution barriers? What are the opportunities? How does this compare from the earlier work that we did on the front end of the engagement, if we're now at, for example, the midpoint or the 3/4 stage of a journey or an engagement? And so I oftentimes leverage that foundationally as a jumping off point to go into a conversation with my sponsor. I'm in the process of doing that right now as we speak. So let's truly go beyond assumptions and speak to the facts. I think oftentimes we focus on not the core issue, but we focus on the the symptoms, and and because we're focusing on this symptoms, we're not paying attention to the core issues. Oftentimes, right, there's an underlying factor behind that. And so for me, there's an outfit, being first, right? So a lot of us are probably familiar with Dean and Linda, Anderson. They have what they call, I think it's leading.
Transformations.
No. It's asking, basically it's asking, you're asking questions as opposed to telling them the answers. They have a whole phraseology and, everything that they've created around this. But I think that's the starting point to be able to have that type of coaching conversation, but you have to enter that conversation with some facts on the ground that deal with the core issue.
I think that's very true, Ty. And just one small point. I think nobody will accept coaching unless they're open to it. And I think there is no way, in my experience, I could go into, it doesn't matter what level they are in the business, and start coaching someone. If they're not into it, they're just not going to take it. You have to build a rapport. You have to build a relationship with that person. You have to have a relationship of trust, and it takes time. Sometimes with some people are more open and more ready to that. So I think that's a really important point. I think the other point is there is absolutely these high growth breakneck businesses. There is only so long they can keep doing that and neglect taking people along with them if they don't want to have massive attrition rates or just burnouts or whatever else that they're doing. So I think it doesn't mean that you can't go fast. It means that you need to do things in a different way to do that and get them to understand what that means from a change management point of view, to go fast and to enable that speed of change. But I think there isn't an infinite capacity of speed of change. And I think that's really important for leaders to understand that as well, and to have a discussion around that, in my view.
One of the things I didn't talk about in my intro is I am very involved and have been for several years around understanding the future of work. And actually in 2020 became a co-owner of the 4-day work week trademark here in the US. Every organization is facing a future of work that looks nothing like work did before COVID. And so what we're talking about here, bringing coaching in as a resource to help make those significant changes is really important. I want to take that into one of my clients based on Karen's question or statement in the chat. Karen said, "We mentioned culture. It is important to understand whether the current culture supports transformation value and the role that coaching plays in creating the right culture." I'm working with a client right now. It is a division of a company that has over 10,000 employees. And they brought in a consulting company to help them define a new culture for that division. And that culture company actually worked them through to the point where for their leadership and down into the organization, they identified a stop, start, continue checklist going all the way back to William Bridges. We are now coaching, group coaching the top 18 leaders, that's 5 levels of leadership, against that checklist. And those leaders also have one-on-one individual coaches. So they are very successfully, by the way, making significant cultural change using culture as a resource. Again, part of the value is I bring in my understanding of successfully executing change to that coaching process.
So I'd like to just bring the conversation back to where Ty was for a moment, because if we come back to really say, coaching, what are some of the benefits of coaching and how do you articulate that in a value statement? I also come in with a risk perspective. And so how do you really quantify that change management speeds up your adoption? And so if we're talking about value to change practitioners with their case to sponsors, anything that speeds up adoption is going to be part of our business case, really. So one of the things that I do is I actually calculate out what are the intangible benefits that coaching brings to the table, and I make like a little financial model assumption. But what are the intangible benefits that coaching brings to the table? So what are the benefits of having deeper conversations sooner? What are the benefits of having better and deeper understanding that you don't have to redo over time? And then I put some numbers to that and put that on an average stakeholder salary and come back and say, okay, this is what it looks like with change management. This is what it looks like with change management adding coaching in, and quantify those numbers to come back to what Carol Ann was saying, which is we need to speak business terminology. So I don't know if that helps, but that helps me kind of get into the business conversation.
Really helpful. Thank you all.
Okay, other questions from the group audience? Anyone? I just dated myself. David.
There was a question earlier by David. I see David's raising his hand as well, and it was, what would you recommend as a good approach to establishing that relationship? Can you, David, can you elaborate a little further?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all. This is some fantastic stuff. I'm loving it. Ty, you were talking about really having that trusted advisor relationship and really sitting down with, your sponsor and becoming a partner with your sponsor. And I'm a huge fan of this concept. In fact, I think that whether it's change management, project management, whatever we've been tasked to do, if we're not working in that partner relationship, we're doing both ourselves and who we're working with a disservice. So my question for you is, what's your recommendation for how to best build that relationship? Because I've yet to meet anyone who disagrees with the concept. Where they struggle is the how. And Theresa, the reason I just raised my hand just now is because I'm curious where you got your numbers from what you were just talking about. So I'll put both of those out there and you guys can decide which order you want to go in.
Okay, so I was just typing you a little answer there, David. So, so what I do is I have this little financial model that I've created with assumptions. And then, so for example, what's the average salary of, a certain group of stakeholders? And when I go into the client, because I'm an external consultant, I will ask for that information and put it in there. So if the average cost of a stakeholder group is $100,000, say total cost per year, then I put in $100,000 and start estimating, okay, if it took 30% of their time to come up the curve, here's the cost, here's the cost of no change management. And if you make an assumption about coaching, speeding it up, and I've seen it speed up, as much as 30%, then you can put it in that way. And you can explain to them that it's a hypothetical model, but they can make their own pieces and insert it into the model. So that's what I do so that people can tangibly see it.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David, to answer your question, I think it just starts with trust and building trust over time and having a relationship that's based and steeped in trust, and that's ultimately delivering what you've promised to your client. And if you're unable to deliver, renegotiating timelines, deliverables, etc. But it's something that you have to earn over time. Very difficult to build and very easy to lose. I think what's important there as a change practitioner is also having a point of view, and being a truth teller. Again, it's a high stakes game when you're playing the role of truth teller and disruptor, but I think it adds a great deal of value. You know, as a change practitioner, one of your responsibilities is the health of that overarching program that you're supporting as well. And you're wanting to see your sponsor ultimately succeed. So building a relationship steeped in trust around those parameters.
I think that trust building is massively important. And I think change managers, to be effective, I really believe this, need to spend time in understanding the business a bit. And not only bringing about change, but understanding the world that these people live in. And if you're going to support somebody and provide coaching to them, I think there's a famous saying, I don't know who coined it, but if you talk to a person in a language that they understand, you go to their head. And if you talk to a person in their own language, you go to their heart. So you need to try and build a rapport with somebody where you can, in some respects, even intellectually spar with them in some ways, because that is where you start to build trust and where they say, that's valuable for me.
Yeah.
It's valuable for me to get these insights. It's valuable because in a way you want to grow their understanding of why this is important for them, but they have to feel it, right? And you have to be able to calibrate what you're doing to get them to feel that. And I think somebody said, I think in the chat, and maybe Ty, you also said this, or maybe it was you, Brian, I don't remember, but curiosity is so important. Really trying to understand that other person and getting them to articulate what their challenges and fears are. Getting to understand them is so important, I think.
As change practitioners, we tend to have a vendor relationship with our clients, whether we're internal or external. We're providing a service, we're providing a methodology, et cetera, et cetera. I think it was Ty that just used a key word. The more we can create a coaching relationship with those people we are working with, the more we are partnering with them in the success of the change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brian, can you explain what a coaching relationship is like? Because I'd like us to kind of come back specifically to coaching and change management at a practical level, so we can really draw some conclusions. Because we made some, I think, really great points, but you know, I think understanding a coaching relationship from your perspective would add a lot of value.
For me, and I'm going to take this from a personal professional perspective, Terry. For me, a coaching relationship is about being there. My success comes from my client's success, first of all. I am there to help them achieve their vision, in some cases to help them really understand even what their vision is. And to guide them along the process. I wrote a chapter for the Handbook of Personal and Organizational Transformation 3 or 4 years ago, and it's called The Hero and the Sherpa. Our clients are heroes, whether we're change practitioners or coaches, we're the Sherpas, we're the guides. The difference is I'm not there to guide my client through the solution that I think is right. I'm there to guide my client to find the solution that works for them.
Right.
So hopefully that helps to start that clarification of that relationship. Carol Ann, Ty, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you. And I think that's why you need to be able to connect and build that trust, to Ty's point, that you can get the person that you're coaching to open up to you, to be able to start to explore that. And I think that's absolutely fundamental, because that's where you will get the buy-in, and you will get the trust, and you will get that growth and that momentum on their side, which is important, I think.
Yep, and just to put a bow on that, at least from my perspective, is Daryl Connor speaks a lot about clarifying the intent of the change, right? So what are we really going to see for outcomes? What are we really looking at as a transformation? And so to Carol Ann's point and Brian's definition, using the open-ended questions and the coaching approach allows you to really get that clarification that you need in doing your work, and do it in a way that really solidifies, I think, the person's understanding of what they're committing to. Great. Any other questions from the audience?
Just really quickly, and I put this into chat a little earlier. The tool that I mentioned from the folks at Being First is asking questions that educate. So if you have an opportunity, or if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a really great tool and set of questions that you can leverage in your coaching practice as well. I think when we're wearing that consulting hat, again, we're oftentimes telling. This allows you to put on that coaching hat as well. So take a look, asking questions that educate.
That's great.
Okay, that's great.
Scarlett, we do have some coaching taster videos where we are basically informing folks about our course, where we do examples of consulting and then versus using a coach approach. So those are on the Change Management Review website, and those might be helpful to you. So I have a question for our experts. When don't you do coaching? When is it not appropriate to use a coach approach as a change practitioner?
Well, I mean, maybe there are a list of good scenarios where you don't. I mean, I certainly don't go near coaching if I get a sense that the person is not open to it. I really don't. And I think it can really cause more damage than good, because if they're fully rejecting it, it's just not work. Actually, the fundamentals of how a coaching scenario works, it just isn't there to start with. So you can't go down that road. And I think that's for me a fundamental golden rule, right? You can't step over that line. I really haven't really thought about that. When is it not appropriate? I guess I just go with my gut feel.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm with you, Carol Ann. I think it's based on intuition and gut feel, and it's largely situational, and that comes with experience. And I will say, as an example, are those instances where you find or you have clients that are constantly spinning their wheels, and you're having a circular conversation, and there's no action, right, that comes out of those conversations. In that particular instance, there's a need to be direct and ask very pointed questions to really change the tide. So I think for me, that would be an example of a situation where you may not want to continue in that zone or space of coaching.
Right. One thing that I think about is if it tends to feel like it's a professional development need that the client has, so a leadership development need or a management development need, and it's kind of outside the scope of my program as a consultant, then I usually bring in organizational development or an executive coach or someone who can actually provide that skill building guidance as they go along. And Ted mentioned in the chat, that there are assessments that you can use. And I think that when you're getting to that level of expertise, that's when those folks, I think, add a lot of value. But great answers. Great answers.
Theresa, I would add one thing if there's a moment. I would just say that if the success of the change, it will not be influenced by this particular stakeholder or sponsor. Either they're not influential or the people that are being impacted by the change are not influenced by them. If they're not a contributing factor to the change, then I don't know that coaching is going to add additional value to the change management effort.
Yeah, and I think also getting clear on what the coach approach is, and in an interaction with someone, and realizing that you can use it just by putting in some powerful questions into the middle of your consulting conversation. It doesn't have to be, setting it up as part of your front end conversation. Great. So FR, you wanted to add something.
Sorry, my name is Farhat. Hi.
Oh, pretty.
So recent example, this happened to me. I joined a company and I was pretty new there, and they were already doing the course of change. So one thing that I learned was not to coach was when I went into the project, I realized that I couldn't be coaching. They had a lot of objections, and I realized it was because their stakeholder alignment was missing really from top to bottom. So, the leaders were aware of it, but somewhere the changes that were going to happen was not functionalized in the change alignment meetings, etc. So that's where we had to regroup, and I told the project team, hey, so that's when you kind of go back and tell them, this is not going to work. As a change lead, I don't think this is my space, and this is where you turn advisory and tell them why it's not going to work, and really tell them the facts. So they had to go back and really redo the alignment and come back for the project to really launch, and that was done. So just one short feedback. Sorry about that.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else?
I want to pick up on something that Carol Ann said fairly early on in the conversation.
Okay.
As we get close to wrapping up here, Carol Ann talked a little bit about making change management agile. And that mindset really is about expanding our thinking outside the traditional realm of change management. It's clearly a message that we at Change Management Review have been trying to broadcast for years. Very, very many of our guests on webinars, on podcasts, and guest authors are from outside the field of change management. But increasingly, I think, as, again, the world of work experiences such disruption, we need to look at what other professions can bring to support us in the work that we're doing. So that's what I wanted to add.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Well, I think we've reached our time for today. Brian and I would like to thank all of you and thank Ty Burton and Carol Ann Ormsby for joining us for this conversation. It was very eye-opening. Personally, I really enjoyed it, so I hope you did too. And we will have this recording up on our website very shortly, and we'll send out a note when it's ready. But if you have anything else that you have a question on, feel free to send it to editor@changemanagementreview.com, and we'll get right back to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invitation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.